my presentation. And Carrie, if you have any questions, please just chip in.
Yeah, I'm just out in my yard, I'm gonna listen and then I'll ask questions as because I do have it all set up and we've been using it. I just want to make sure we're doing everything right. So
yeah, let me just ask you a question, Carrie. What kind of a pool do you have?
I mean, this is just off of Amazon. It's a 4 foot. I don't even know what brand it is. It's this
Above ground pool?
hardback. It's above ground. Sorry, it's an above ground 4 foot, 15 feet wide pool.
Okay, and are you
15 feet
just using traditional
diameter.
chlorine?
No, we have the frog flipper. We have all the supplies from the pool store. That's where we've gotten everything. So we have the slow flow, the pool flipper in. We have the shock treatments
Okay,
that we're
very good.
doing once a week.
Okay, well, very good.
Um,
I'll get started here, and hopefully this will
okay,
kind of help review what you should be doing. So,
cool.
we kind of labeled
Thanks.
this as how to open your pool. With this being really the middle of June, pools really should be open now. We recommend that when the water temperature gets above 65 degrees, that you get the pool open and running, even though you might not be swimming at 65 degrees. At least you can keep an eye on it and get the pool circulating and filtering and keep the chlorine level up, that type of thing. This is about the time of year, well, actually we're past it, that the winterizing chemicals, if you winterized your pool and put one of our winter kits in, they pretty much have long expired, and typically the winterizing chemicals will last from like October to April. Typically it kind of depends on how mild the winter is, but we definitely want to get the pool up and running and keep an eye on it, even though you're not using it. Just pretty minimal maintenance to keep the pool clear. So I'm going to continue on here. Let me get my presentation advanced here. So this is what I'm going to
Can
cover
I
this.
super quick ask a question and then I
Yeah,
won't bother.
you
After
bet, Karen.
this, I'm actually really curious about the winterizing process. My husband thought we needed to take the pool. It's an above ground, completely down, drain the water, and uh, you know, fold up the material and put it away for the winter. Do
So
you
it's really
think?
yeah, it's kind of personal choice. Some people do that.
Okay.
Some people leave it up because you basically, when we winterize the pool, we get the water balance kind of like you should do all summer, and then we put a winter kit
Hmm.
in, and then a lot of folks will disconnect the equipment, even put the equipment in the garage. So basically, you've just got the water sitting there, and it's all been
Hmm.
treated, and then it's ready to go next spring when you open it up.
Okay. Yeah, I'll ask about that after you do your whole presentation and we'll
Okay,
call about it when the time comes, whatever. Okay, that's great to know. I didn't even know that was an option. So
yeah, you bet.
awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. So these are all the things I'm going to cover this morning, and we'll some of the things we'll go through fairly quickly, but we'll talk a little bit about the pool anatomy, which is important to know how the pump and filter operate, what we call the 5 keys to pool care. Um, and then the water chemistry piece, we kind of put that in two portions: the importance of maintaining proper water balance, and then the different pool care systems, whether it's chlorine or a salt water system, that type of thing. And then there's a couple of things that we can do to enhance really the performance of the water care programs that we're using. So just a couple of things about us in the Pool and Spa House. We've been making pool and spa care products for over 60 years, and we've partnered with the Pool and Spa House for pretty close to 40 years in the Northwest with their 4 stores and now 5 stores in the Portland, Vancouver area. We only make professional grade water quality products that we stand behind. And if you haven't taken advantage of it before, they do offer complimentary water testing in all of their stores, which I definitely recommend having done once a month. We'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes, but I definitely, if you've not taken a water sample into one of their stores, I definitely would recommend doing that as soon as possible, because there's some things they can test a lot more accurately than you and I can with our test strips at home, and they can help get the pool properly balanced. Um, these are what we call the 5 keys to pool care, and I'm going to go through all of these, and we'll go through them, some of them fairly quickly. but this gives you kind of an overview of everything that you kind of need to do to keep the pool looking good, make it safe for your family, easy to maintain. But basically, like you can see, 5 things: good circulation, that's the amount of time that you run the pump, proper filtration. There's a few cleaning chores that we need to do, like vacuuming and brushing, which I'll touch on. The testing, I'll talk about what you need to test for at home, and then the testing that they do at the pool and spa house to help with some of the other things that you can't, some of them you can't test for at home, and some of them they can test a lot more accurately than you can with your test strips. And then we'll get into the water chemistry portion. So as far as the types of pools, whether it's an in-ground pool, above ground pool, it doesn't really matter. We treat them all the same. In fact, we doesn't even matter if it's a residential or a commercial pool, a hotel, motel pool, they treat their pools exactly the same. It's just important to know, obviously, what type of pool that you have, and a little bit about the way the pool circulation system works is important. Is basically you have 2 main components in a pool. Let me get my little pointer up here. Is everybody's going to have a pump. Everybody's going to have a filter. Some people have cartridge filters. Some people have sand filters. I'll talk about those in a couple of minutes. The way the water circulates is at the top of the pool, you've got the skimmer, and in-ground pools at the bottom of the pool, they have a main drain. Those are basically the 2 places where the water is drawn from the pool and basically drawn back to the pump. We call that the suction side of the system, and then the water is pushed out the pump into the filter where it's cleaned. If you have a heater, it goes to the heater, and then if you've got some type of a chlorinating system, that'll be input right here, and then the water goes back to the pool through the return inlets. Pretty simple technology, but we spend a little bit of time on this because if this isn't working properly, if we don't run the pump long enough, all of the chemicals that we put in don't work very well if this isn't working properly. So just a couple things on this slide. Make sure the skimmer is working properly, that the skimmer basket's kept clean. That's basically a pre-filter. Also on the front of most pumps, there's what's called the hair and lint pot. There's a little basket inside there. That's another pre-filter. We want to keep that clean as well. Where the water comes back into the pool, these return inlets, if you have return inlets that have little directional eyeball fittings on them, you want them slightly tilted down at a 45-degree angle to kind of drive the water down to the bottom of the pool, especially carrying your above ground pool where you typically don't have a main drain. It's really important to kind of push that water down towards the bottom of the pool and get good circulation, good mixing of the water. This kind of illustrates this. Again, this is an in-ground pool with the main drain at the bottom of the pool here. In an above-ground pool, you're just typically going to have a skimmer, draws the water back to the pump, filter, heater if you have one, and then back to the pool. This is a typical equipment pad for a in-ground pool where you've got the pump, the filter. This is a sand filter, a heater. This actually has a salt water cell on it where the water goes back to the pool. Those are the components of an in-ground pool. This is typically the components of an above-ground pool, a little bit smaller because you're typically dealing with a little smaller gallonage than an in-ground pool. So you've got your pump. This happens to be a small sand filter for above-ground pool. But again, the water gets drawn in through the front of the pump, goes out the top of the pump into the filter, and then back to the pool. Pretty simple technology. So this is the first key, and this is maintaining good circulation. This is the amount of time that the pump is running. And we recommend a minimum of 10 to 12 hours a day that the pump is running. That ensures the water is being filtered, cleaned, the chemicals are being distributed properly. The other thing from this slide, the water, people always ask, where should my water level be? We want to have the water level halfway up the skimmer, as you can see here on this side view. And you also want to make sure that little gate that's inside, if you've got what we call a floating weir, you want to make sure that that's functioning properly, because what that does, that acts as kind of like a waterfall that draws the dirt and debris that's been laying on top of the surface of the water into the skimmer, catches it in the skimmer basket. This is basically a pre-filter. And again, we want to keep that basket clean. If that gets all clogged up with debris, that's going to reduce our circulation and reduce our filtration. So a minimum of 10 to 12 hours a day. We typically recommend 24 hours a day. The more, the better that you run the pump. We have such a short season in the Northwest that if you're only running it 10 or 12 hours a day, you may not be getting all the water through the pump and the filter, the chemicals distributed properly. You can get by with 10 to 12 hours a day, but if you ever have any kind of a water quality issue, cloudy water, algae, you want to run it 24 hours a day until you solve those issues, and then go back to the 10 to 12 hours a day. Especially, we're already getting close to the end of June. We basically, have 2.5 months of swim season left. Running the pump 24 hours a day typically isn't that expensive in the Northwest, where our electrical costs are lower than other parts of the country. So make sure you're running the pump long enough. That's the first key. The second key is we want to have good filtration. And so these are the 3 types of filters that are used on pools. We've got sand filters, cartridge filters, what are called diatomaceous earth filters. It's important that these are functioning properly. They're kept clean. We have to change the filter media periodically, like on a sand filter. We'd recommend Tony, how often are you recommending changing sand?
Residential pools, if you're on a basic chlorine system, or in Carrie's case, kind of a mineral chlorine system, every 5 years is good. And that's with the caveat that you are cleaning it properly. And Randy will get into that too. But every 5 years, generally.
Yeah. And how about the cartridges? How long do those last?
Cartridge, probably more like a couple years. It just depends on how well they're maintained, because they can get to the point where they're just almost not worth cleaning if they kind of get neglected, to the point where it's just easier to buy a new one. So I would say
Sure.
probably a couple years on average.
Okay. And so it's important that these are in good working order. If you're new to the pool and spa house, I definitely would get the model number, take a picture of the filter so the staff knows if, what cartridge that needs to be replaced, or they'll know how many pounds of sand or crushed glass. That's typically what we use nowadays in the sand filters. It works a little bit better, is how much of that needs to go into the filter. Also, on all of the filters, typically you're going to have a pressure gauge. Make sure that pressure gauge is functioning properly. That basically will tell you how dirty the filter is. When that pressure gauge goes up about 8 to 10 pounds above the clean pressure, that's when you want to either pull the cartridges out and rinse them off, or backwash the sand filter. That basically determines how dirty the filter is and whether it needs to be cleaned a little bit. This is kind of a side view of a sand filter, which is probably the predominant filter that we see in swimming pools in the Northwest. And it's pretty simple technology. We call it a sand filter, but as I indicated, most people are using crushed glass these days. And this side view that you see right here, we fill the sand filter up about 3/4 of the way with crushed glass. And as the water comes through the filter, it kind of goes over this diffuser, and the water goes down through the sand. The sand picks up the dirt and debris, and down at the bottom of the filter are these little tubes called laterals that have basically slots in them that allow the water through, but not the sand. And then that clean water goes back to the pool. When the sand filters need to be backwashed, when that pressure gauge goes up, we need to get that loose debris that's in the sand filter, because there's too much of it in there. We basically would turn the pump off, put the filter in the backwash position, and then you turn the pump on until the water is clear in the sight glass, and then you shut it off, put it on the rinse setting, run that for 30 seconds or so to rinse the valve out, and then turn the pump off and back in normal filter cycles. So a couple things about this. Sometimes people with sand filters backwash too frequently. You want to wait till that pressure gauge goes up, that 8 to 10 pounds. The sand filters work better when they're a little bit dirty. And if you've got any questions on this, they've got a lot of instructions there at the Pool and Spa House to help with the filter maintenance, because this is pretty critical to how well the water's being filtered. And so you want to make sure, especially at the beginning of the season, that you're set up for success, that filter is working really well. So as I indicated, the pressure gauge tells us when we basically there's too much dirt in there, we need to rinse that off. That basically gets rid of the loose debris, but we do recommend twice a season chemically cleaning the filter. And typically in this area, if you're on a traditional chlorine program, we use a product called Strip Quick. If you're on our non-chlorine system called Soft Swim, we use the Soft Swim filter cleaner. Sometimes if somebody has metals in the water, we'll use this product called Clean It. But this should be done twice a year, like the middle to end of July. And then when you winterize the pool, just before you winterize the pool, out in October, you'd want to chemically clean that filter so that it's not clogged up with greases and oils and contaminants all winter. So definitely want to do that. And Tony and his team can explain how to chemically clean the filters. They've got directions in the store to help with this, but this is critical to keeping the water looking good. The other thing on this slide, this little Skimmer blue sock that you see on the skimmer basket, this can be really helpful if you get a lot of fine debris into the pool that collects in the skimmer basket, or maybe it's so fine that it blows through the skimmer basket against caught in the hair and lint pot or even into the filter. This can really help enhance the filtration and pick up a lot of that fine particulate. These come 5 to a package. You just replace these once a month, and this will keep a lot of that debris from getting into the pump and into the filter. And it also has a chemical on it called Miselex that pulls out body oils and suntan lotions. So if your pool gets a lot of use, these can be definitely helpful. So that's the second key, maintaining good filtration. And then the third key, this is probably the least fun part of owning a pool, but a necessary part, is keeping the pool clean. And obviously want to keep it clean so it's inviting to use the pool. But the cleaner you keep it, the less chemicals you'll use as well. So up here on the top right, vacuuming the pool as needed if you've got debris laying on the bottom of the pool. So it kind of depends how often you vacuum on how much debris gets into the pool. If you've got a lot of vegetation around the pool, you're obviously going to have to do that a little bit more often. We do recommend brushing the pool once a week. Make sure you have a nylon brush once a week. You don't have to put a lot of elbow grease into this. You just want to kind of brush the walls, the bottom of the pool, and what that does, gets any algae that might be starting to grow, any biofilms off the walls, off the bottom of the pool into the water, where either the chemicals can remove it or the filter can remove it. Skimming as needed. If you've got debris, laying on top of the surface of the water, get your skimmer net out. There's a couple of cleaning products that we can use. This product called Off the Wall on the right here. If you've got any kind of a water line buildup, you might call it a scum line around the pool, this is a thick cleaner that you put on a sponge or a scrub brush to clean the water line. This is important because if you get too much of a water line buildup and it's on there for too long, it can become hard to remove and a little bit more permanent. So we definitely want to keep the water line clean. And then when you take your winter cover off in the spring, we use a cleaner called Stowaway to protect it so it doesn't mold and mildew over the summer. And then when you take your solar blanket off in the fall, we would clean it with Stowaway as well. The other thing that can make things a lot easier, these have been out for a while, but robotic cleaners. These basically do 4 or 5 different things. They vacuum the pool, and basically this is kind of like what are they called? The vacuum cleaners you use at home, the Zumbas. This is like kind of a Zumba for the pool, where this will vacuum the pool, brush the pool, it filters the water, it circulates the water. This can be very, very helpful. It takes a lot of the maintenance work out of the manual process of brushing and vacuuming and that type of thing. So those can be very helpful. Anything you want to say on these, Tony?
No, I mean, for Carrie's situation, she has a small 15-foot round above ground pool. Carrie, there are versions of these types of cleaners for your simple pool that will primarily just focus on the floor of the pool. Actually, I think one of them will climb the walls and kind of scrub the walls a little bit too. But there's a price tag for technology and things like this. But the nice thing is they're you put them in the water, you basically press a button and it goes through its cycle. Then it's done and just kind of does it on its own. But yeah, ultimately these are super popular and they are very effective. Have a great just durability about them. And yeah, we've been selling a lot of them for the last probably 5-6 years in this particular brand. So yeah, very
Thanks,
recommended.
Tony.
Can I ask a quick question about that? I've already was wondering about a pool something, but I would rather just do it myself. Is there like a kind of a pool vacuum that you can just get in the water and go vacuum it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We have options that are kind of rechargeable battery powered. Carrie, that would be a great fit for you. And you're under $200 for something like that. That's got a lithium ion rechargeable battery system to it. You attach to your telescoping pole and you can get down in there and do all that yourself. So yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Should I get I haven't bought I mean, we need these things. Like we're going to come today because it's already needing it. My skimmer net, should I get the one with the attachable pole and then I just attach that to the vacuum or attach that to the net?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the great thing about what we sell. Everything is component based. So everything will fit our telescoping poles that we have, and we have them in different lengths. So we have the right length for your pool, and whether it be a brush, a nylon brush that Randy's already alluded to, a skimmer net, all these types of attachments will fit that same pole, even that rechargeable vacuum cleaner. So yeah, it makes it very simple and easy.
Thank you.
So the fourth key is testing the water, and really this is critical because this is really the only way you know if the water is safe for people to get in. And the little test strips that we've got over here on the left, these are called 5-way test strips. They test for chlorine. They do test for bromine if you're using bromine as a sanitizer, the pH of the water, total alkalinity, total hardness. This should be done really, if you're a new pool owner, I would say a couple times a week after you kind of learn your pool's personality. Probably once a week is enough. The main tests that you're going to be performing is the chlorine test and the pH test. Those are the most critical. It's kind of like the health department when they come out to a hotel motel pool. There's really three things that would get the pool shut down: not enough chlorine, the pH being out of balance, and not being able to see the bottom of the pool, which is obviously a drowning risk. So those are kind of the key things. But the chlorine and the pH, if you're a little bit unsure of what you're reading, bring your test strips in the store. Tony or any of his staff would be glad to show you how to read the test strips, what to do if they're out of the proper range. And then definitely, as I mentioned earlier, I definitely recommend once a month, bring a water sample into one of the Pool and Spa House stores, have them run it through what we call our Alex system, which is a computerized water analysis. They do need about a pint of water, ideally within a couple of hours of taking it out of the pool, and they'll basically give you a recipe at no cost to get the water properly balanced. It'll tell you what order to put the products in, how long to wait, and this can be very helpful, especially for the things that don't fluctuate that much. So when I get into the water chemistry in a minute, there's a couple things like the calcium hardness and total alkalinity. Those don't fluctuate a lot, so you don't have to worry too much about those. Just really the chlorine and the pH test is going to be the main things that you're going to want to keep an eye on. So as far as the water chemistry, really there's two portions of water chemistry: the water balance portion, which everybody needs to maintain. It doesn't matter what system you're on. Like Carrie, you're on the kind of a low chlorine mineral system. If you're on traditional chlorine tablets or sticks, if you're on our non-chlorine system like Soft Swim, or if you have a saltwater pool, we still have to maintain pH, total alkalinity, calcium hardness. These are the three main water balancing factors. There's a couple other things that Tony and his team will look at. One's called total dissolved solids, And this is kind of the overall water balance. They'll look at that. You don't have to worry about that yourselves. They'll help you make sure that those are in the proper ranges. And speaking of proper ranges, these are the ideal readings that we want. 1 to 4 parts per million of chlorine is the proper range of chlorine to keep the water sanitized. These are the two most important ones. The second one is the pH. This is how either acidic or basic the water is. This is the pH range that we want. If it's lower than that, we have to increase it. If it's higher than 7.6, we need to decrease it. And then Tony and his team will help you with these other three, the total alkalinity of the water, calcium hardness. If there's high level of phosphates, they'll help you get rid of those. These pretty much, if you bring a water sample in once a month, you're not going to have to worry about these. They'll help you keep those in the proper ranges. The reason the pH and water balance is so important is really these 4 things. Is if we don't maintain good water balance, we can have equipment and surface damage. So what we're really talking about here is the pH of the water. When the pH gets really low, especially below 7.2, the water becomes corrosive and aggressive. So these top 2 pictures, this is the inside of a gas pool heater that's made out of copper that's been eaten away because of low pH. This is a vinyl pool that had all these wrinkles were caused by the pH being low, where it pulled the plasticizers out of the vinyl, and the vinyl actually became brittle and wrinkled. This can also hurt the surface of a plaster pool or a fiberglass pool. So this is from low pH. Then the other side of the scale, when the pH gets too high, then we get this mineral deposit. This is called scale, this white deposit that you see on the wall of the pool. This deposit you see on the cartridge filter, that's calcium that's precipitated out of the water because the pH got high and formed scale. So low pH causes corrosion, high pH causes scale. The other thing that happens is we're most comfortable in the pool water when the pH is in the proper range. If it gets too low or too high, we can get eye irritation and skin irritation from improper pH. Sometimes people blame, skin rashes from chlorine or lack of chlorine. Sometimes it's just the pH of the water. So you're going to be more comfortable in the water when the pH is in the proper range. And then the last one is sanitizer inefficiency. And what this is talking about, chlorine works the best when the pH is in that range. If it's too low, it dissipates too quickly and we use it up too quickly. If the pH is too high, it becomes lazy and doesn't kill bacteria as effectively. So really the pH controls everything. That's why it needs to be tested at least once a week. If you're a new pool owner, 2 or 3 times a week until you kind of get the hang of it. And then definitely rely on the team at the Pool and Spa House to help guide you on this as well. So this slide shows this is basically a test kit. This side tests chlorine, this side tests pH. What we're looking for on the pH, it should be kind of a pinkish red color if you're using a test kit or even the test strips. And so the reason I have this on the slide, pH and total alkalinity are, you might say, interrelated, is that pH is the most important factor. This is how acidic or basic the water is. The total alkalinity, what it is certain minerals that are in the water that help keep the pH in balance. And so this is basically certain minerals that are in the water. And for the most part in Western Oregon, Western Washington, total alkalinity, the mineral content of our water is very low. So typically when you open up a pool at the beginning of the season, you're typically going to have to add some total alkalinity increaser to the water, at least here in the Northwest. You move to another part of the country, total alkalinity could be a lot different, and it could be high in other areas of the country. But the main purpose of this is to keep the pH in balance. And if you're getting this tested once a month, that's really plenty. This is the one that you want to focus on at home, is if the pH is in the proper range, you don't have to do anything. This is not like sometimes people ask, do I have to add pH every week? No, this is just as needed. If the pH is low, we increase it. If the pH is high, we decrease it for those reasons that I just explained. So this is just based on the test that you're going to run. And one of the questions people ask quite often is, what causes the pH to change? Get it in the proper range today, but in a couple of days it's out of whack again. Is really everything that gets into the water, swimmers, pool surfaces. If you've got a plaster pool and you get the surface plastered, that takes a while for it to cure. The pH tends to rise. We get a fair amount of rain in the Northwest. Rainwater will typically be acidic in most cases. That can decrease the pH. The different chemicals that we use, a lot of them do not have a neutral pH, so that'll affect it. The fill water, in fact, if you're bringing a water sample into the store for the first time, you might even bring a sample of your tap water, the water you fill the pool with, so we can kind of see what happens when you add new water to the pool, how that's going to affect the water balance. And then algae, if you ever get algae typically causes the pH to rise. And then if you've got a salt water system on your pool, that also causes the pH to rise. So really the bottom line is anything and everything tends to cause the pH to fluctuate. That's why we have to test it at least once a week to keep it in balance. And so we want it in the comfort zone. If it's low, especially when it gets below 7.2 and especially below 7, the water's too acidic, it's corrosive. Now the water might be extra clear, which is good, but these other three things are not. Eye irritation, corrosion of pool surfaces and equipment, the chlorine's too active and it gets used up too quickly. If the pH gets above 7.6 and especially above 7.8, then we have these four issues contribute to cloudy water, itchy skin, scale formation, and the chlorine is less active and doesn't do a good job of killing bacteria. So that's the importance of pH. And then pretty simply, the products that we use to adjust these, if your pH is ever low, we add a product called Balance Pack 200, which is a pH increasing product. This gets added directly to the pool, pump and filter operating, wait a half an hour, boom, you can get in the pool. It's that simple to bring the pH up. If your pH was ever the other direction where it's high, then we add a product called Low and Slow, which is a dry acidic based product. Same principle, add it directly to the pool, pump and filter operating, allow it to circulate for half an hour, and then people can get in the pool. Pretty simple. And then if your total alkalinity is low, which is typically common in our area, we add a product called Balance Pack 100, which is a total alkalinity increaser to bring that level up into the proper range, thus making it easier to control the pH. So those are really the critical factors of maintaining proper water balance. Any questions, Carrie?
Randy, I'd also add that
No,
Carrie's-
that was helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie. I would also add, for Carrie's benefit, when the alkalinity is low, and that's a great example where a product like Total Alkalinity Increaser also has an extreme pH to it. So it's also going to affect the pH with it as you add that particular product. So a lot of times raising the total alkalinity will also properly adjust the pH as well. But sometimes when you add the alkalinity, you also have to adjust the pH once that is settled as well. So that just falls into that kind of an example of extreme pHs with products, how that affects the pH specifically.
Yeah, good point, Tony. And that's
I was
why.
just going to say,
Go ahead, Carrie.
go ahead.
No, go
You
ahead.
finish
You're
and
good.
then I'll just say what I had.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
I added low and slow, slow and low, low and slow, because we took a sample of water in last week. We just opened the pool, then took a sample, then we were then a little high on the pH, I believe. So we added the
Okay.
low and slow. So that's
Yeah.
just helpful for me to understand the behind the scenes as to why and what
Yeah.
happens when you have that problem.
You bet, Carrie. And that's one of the things that if you do bring a water sample in like you did, the computer printout takes all of that into consideration. Like Tony said, the alkalinity increaser, the Balance Pack 100 does raise the pH as well. So the computer will calculate that and have you, if needed, it'll have you add some low and slow to bring that down. So typically we'd recommend, before we really get into summer, get the pool properly balanced, like in April or May, and then it'll be ready for summer. Really, the other thing that we do check, because our water is very soft in the Northwest, we don't have to typically put water softeners on our homes, that type of thing, unless you're on well water. We do want to have relatively hard water in a swimming pool. If it's too soft, it tends to make the water too corrosive, and so we obviously don't want that. And if it's too hard, then we tend to have more issues with cloudy water and scale buildup on the surface. So one of the tests that they'll do at the pool and spa house is they'll test the hardness of the water, and if it's too low, which it typically is in the Northwest, they'll have you add a product called Balance Pack 300 that increases the calcium hardness. And typically, once or twice a year, you add this depending on how much new water you put in the pool. This doesn't get consumed. It doesn't get filtered out. The only way the calcium hardness level goes down is by splash out and having to add new water to the pool. So if you had a big party and had a lot of splash out and had to add several inches of water to the pool, I definitely would recommend bringing a water sample into the store, because your calcium hardness level probably is low again, and we need to bump that up a little bit. In other parts of the country where they have super hard water, we actually use a product called Scale Inhibitor on a monthly basis to keep that calcium from precipitating out of scale. This is kind of a Band-Aid. It doesn't remove calcium, but it keeps it in suspension so you aren't as likely to get scale. And then really the last thing that we started testing a few years ago are phosphates in the water. Phosphates can come from groundwater runoff. Some city water has phosphates in it with some of the water treatment products that they put in the water. Be careful if you ever fertilize the lawn around the pool or spray insecticides in trees. Those can put phosphates in the water. And the reason we test for phosphates is these can contribute to poor water quality, like algae, sometimes cloudy water. And so depending on if you have phosphates in the water, depends on how high they are, which product they'll recommend. If they're over like 500 parts per billion, they'll recommend a product called Zero Phos. If they're lower than that, they'll have you add a maintenance dose of Pool Complete weekly. This will make maintaining your pool a lot easier if your phosphate levels are high. So just be aware of that as well. So that was water balance. Really, the last thing as far as the water chemistry goes is what pool care system you're on. It doesn't matter if it's chlorine or non-chlorine soft swim system or even a saltwater system. Basically, there's three things that we have to do to keep the pool safe, clear, and algae free. And you can see on my slide here, and this is kind of the traditional chlorine program. And whether you're doing a little bit different, if you're using one of the mineral cartridges like the Flippin' Frog, kind of the same principle. Soft Swim is our non-chlorine system. Mineral Springs is a system for saltwater pools. They all have to have three things involved. We've got to have sanitizer in the water to kill bacteria. That's what chlorine does. And the type of bacteria, it's basically pathogenic bacteria that causes little skin rashes and ear infections and things like that. We want to make sure we've got sanitizer in the water at all times when people are in the water. And frankly, if you keep your pool filled during the winter, we want to keep that chlorine level in the proper range, even during the winter, because typically when the chlorine level drops, that's when green algae in particular is more likely to grow. So we basically want to keep those levels up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year if you keep the pool filled. We also want to perform what's called oxidation, or more commonly known as shocking the pool. This keeps the water crystal clear. And then we want to add something to prevent algae. Chlorine does kill a lot of the different types of algae, but not all of them. So we typically will add a preventative algicide as well to prevent algae. And so this is what we call our 3-step chlorine program. And I'll go through this here in just a second, which again is sanitizer to control bacteria, shock to destroy contaminants. And when we're talking about contaminants, this is, any type of contaminant that gets into the water, perspiration and body oils, that kind of thing, to get those oxidized out of the water. Add a preventative algicide to stop algae before it starts. Sometimes pool owners think that algae is just part of owning a pool. No, you really don't have to get algae if we do these 3 steps. And then I'll talk about another product that you don't have to use this, but it makes pool care a little bit easier. These 3 are pretty much non-negotiable. We've got to keep sanitizer, shock, and an algicide in the water, and I'll go through those. So this is really our traditional chlorine program where we're keeping chlorine tablets or sticks in the water to control bacteria, and these are fed through, a skimmer, floating feeder, automatic chlorinator. We're using a product called Smart Shock to shock the pool periodically to keep it crystal clear and to keep the contaminants out. We'll add a product called Algae Complete to prevent algae. And then if you want to take kind of the water to the next level, we have a product called Pool Complete Weekly that'll do a couple of other water enhancements. So we'll just kind of run through this. And the first step is keeping chlorine in the water. And this is kind of the critical number right here, 1 to 4 parts per million of chlorine, of what we call free available chlorine. That's what you're going to be testing on the test strips. If the chlorine level is below 1 part per million, that's basically the signal that the water may not be safe to get in. And so if the chlorine level is below 1, really we don't want to let anybody in the pool until we get that level up, and it's pretty easy to increase that level. We can add some granular chlorine that'll dissolve very quickly to kick that level up. This is the step that kills bacteria, a lot of different types of algae, and protects the swimmers from bacteria in the water. And so the traditional chlorine program, and I'll have Tony touch on the Flippin' Frog system that you're using in your pool. But if somebody's using just kind of the traditional chlorine tablets or sticks, these are typically, they weigh 8 ounces, the 3-inch tablets or sticks. The typical consumption is 2 tablets per 10,000 gallons of water weekly. And one of the things I didn't mention at the beginning, it is important to know how many gallons of water you have in your pool, because all of the products that we add to the pool are based on the gallonage of the pool. So if you're a little bit unsure or just want to double check it, if you bring the dimensions of your pool into the store, they can calculate it very closely. They just need to know the shape of the pool, length and width of the pool, and the depth of the pool. Both if you've got a deep end or a shallow end, they need to know the shallow end depth and the deep end depth. So these SilkGuard Complete tablets or sticks, this is not your average chlorine. You might say this is chlorine on steroids. It contains some other added ingredients that make the water feel soft after about 2 or 3 weeks of dissolving. This will make the water feel softer. It also has some ingredients that protect the equipment from corrosion, staining, that type of thing. It also has some algae killing crystals in it for one more layer of protection from getting algae. So again, these are fed through the skimmer, floating feeder, or automatic chlorinator, maintain that 1 to 4 parts per million of chlorine. Tony, maybe you could touch on the system that Carrie's using.
Yeah, so for mineral products like the Flippin' Frog, it's just a little floating ball that you put in these smaller above ground pools, do help with simplicity. And just if you're concerned about using less chlorine, that's certainly an option. That top part is the mineral portion of it. That is good for only 1 season. So 6 months technically, but every season if you stick with that particular format, you're going to need to replace that whole top and bottom whole unit itself every single season. But the bottom portion is the chlorine part, which basically maintains about a 0.5 part per million of chlorine, because the top part is containing the mineral portion, or usually it's silver. It's killing bacteria. So because that's doing some of the hard work, you don't need as much chlorine. So the chlorine part is only keeping about a 0.5 part per million. And you just need to, when you put them together, they snap together, and then there's a setting on that where based on your volume. And as Randy said, knowing your volume is important because you don't want to dissolve too much chlorine or too little chlorine. So that's properly, to properly set it is key to keeping the right sanitizer level in your pool. But that's a quick a quick lowdown on how that particular system works.
Thanks, Tony. And so,
Oh, can I ask a quick question?
yeah, you
It
bet.
cut out for a second, but with the flippin' frog, I didn't quite catch, when do I get another cartridge? I bought the box and I put the flipper in. It says when it flips over, you think I'll need to get one more for the season?
Yeah, and I thank you for asking that because I didn't properly touch on that. The bottom chlorine portion will last you about 4 weeks. And so when it flips over, be prepared to have another refill of the chlorine component, that bottom attachment. Um, be ready to have that on hand so that way when it does start to flip over, you can immediately change that out. So the bottom chlorine
Okay.
portion lasts about 4 weeks, but the top
Okay.
mineral portion is good for the whole season.
Okay, and we
once-
can just buy that, just ask to get that refill chlorine.
You got
part.
it. That's correct. Just ask
Okay,
for the
thanks.
frog refill. Mhm.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and Carrie, as Tony mentioned, it would be good to have one of those on hand because when the chlorine level gets down to zero, that's when it's more likely to get algae. Although you've got, like Tony said, you've got the mineral component that's part of that flippin' frog, and that'll help. That'll help for a while as well. But want to definitely keep an eye on that chlorine level. And then step two is what we call shock or oxidize the water. This is the step to keep the water crystal clear. We typically recommend doing this on a weekly basis. Is that any different on the flippin' frog, Tony?
Nope, not at all.
Okay, so once a week, this is the step, especially if the pool gets, heavy use. If the pool gets light use, if we get some cool weather and you're not using the pool much, may not need to shock every week. But when we get into, July and August, we start getting, 80-degree, 90-degree days, pools getting used. This is the step that keeps the water crystal clear by removing contaminants from the water. And typically the product that we're going to use is called Smart Shock. It comes in a few different sizes and shapes, as 1 pound bags or 2 pound bottles or 25-pound buckets. This is added once a week, 1 pound per 12,000 gallons. You can add this product. You can swim as soon as 15 minutes after you add it. This will remove the contaminants from the water. This is kind of a multi-purpose shock in that it's got a number of different ingredients. It has a little bit of chlorine in it. It has some non-chlorine oxidizer. It also has some algae-killing crystals. Again, one more layer of protection against getting algae. But its main purpose, this is a weekly maintenance product to keep the water crystal clear. We do recommend that when you do add this product that you do keep the cover off the pool for a few hours to allow, there is a chemical process that takes place where it will oxidize contaminants out of the water. So we need the cover off to allow that process to take place. But this is the step that keeps the water crystal clear. So if it's the 4th of July weekend, the pool gets heavy usage on Saturday and Sunday. Sunday would be a great time to shock the pool, either before it gets used Sunday morning or Sunday night. This is the step that keeps the water crystal clear by removing basically the contaminants that people put in the water to keep it crystal clear. This is also the step that if you're shocking often enough, you should never smell chlorine. If you start to smell kind of a foul chlorine odor from the pool, that's typically from not too much chlorine, but from not shocking often enough. Or if you're kind of getting the chlorine odor and burning eyes, that again is typically from not shocking often enough.
Randy, I'd like to add too, for
Yeah.
your pool on that slide, Carrie, your pool is about 5,000 gallons, a little plus or minus. And so I really love this 2 pound. Randy has a picture here of the little 2 pound plastic container. For your size of pool, really, I love this because the 2 pound container you can reseal, and you can also use that cap for kind of a simple measurement tool. So for your size of pool, probably 1 heaping cap full or 2 level cap fulls is all you need to do each week, and then you can reseal it back up. So getting that 2 pound container is a great tool for your size of pool.
And we already got it. You guys already set us up.
Oh, good deal.
We're using it.
All right. So this is one of the biggest fears of pool owners is getting the green swamp. and it never happens at a good time. It always is before, 4th of July weekend, or you've got a pool party coming up or a wedding at your house. This is definitely what we want to prevent from, frankly, from ever happening. I mean, year round, we want to prevent algae. We can treat algae. If you do ever get the green monster like this, don't let it get to the green monster. If you start to see it turn a little bit green, come into the pool and spa house. They can get that resolved fairly quickly, and typically minimal cost if we catch it early enough. When it gets to the green swamp, depending on the size of the pool, it could be $100 to $200 to fix that kind of a problem, or more, depending on how big the pool is. So we want to prevent that from happening. And that algae is everywhere. It's microscopic plant life that's constantly getting into the pool. So algae is always getting into the pool. We just want to prevent it from, basically blooming. And so, the way these are the sources of where algae would come from. So if any animals get in the pool, maybe it's a landing strip for ducks or dogs in the pool. I'm not saying don't let your dog in the pool, but just be aware one dog is equal to about 50 people as far as the contaminants that they put in the pool. And so that's going to typically cause the chlorine to be depleted faster. And when the chlorine gets depleted, that's when we're more likely to get the green algae in particular. So algae is constantly getting into the water. It's always under attack. We just want to prevent it from ever getting a foothold. And the way we're going to do that is typically we'll recommend a product called Algae Complete. This is our best algicide for both preventing and killing algae. If you don't have algae and just want to prevent it, this is the initial dose, 8 ounces per 10,000 gallons at the beginning of the season, and then a maintenance dose of 1.5 ounces every week per 10,000 gallons. This will kill all types of algae, because typically there are thousands of species of algae, but we basically group them by color: green algae, black algae, and mustard algae. If you do ever get algae, I definitely would recommend bring a picture of it. Take a picture with your phone, bring it into the store so Tony and his team can see what kind of algae it is, because they don't test for algae in the store. That would be a very, very expensive testing device. They basically are going to have to rely on what color you tell them it is and how severe it is to what they're going to recommend. And the whole goal here is to prevent it from ever occurring. But if you ever do get it, we definitely want to know what color it is and how severe it is. So that's how we're going to prevent algae. And really the last couple of pieces, these next two things, these are to make things a little bit easier. The first three that we went through, sanitizer, shock, algicide, those are pretty much required. You have to do those. These next two things, this can make life a lot easier as far as how well the pool's maintained, the clarity, that type of thing. The first one, this is called Pool Complete Weekly. This is a multi-purpose product that really does 3 or 4 different things. It has some ingredients that help prevent waterline buildup, kind of that scum line that I was talking about when we were talking about keeping the pool clean. It also has a couple of natural enzymes in it that degrade other non-living contaminants that are in the water that can basically relieve some of the load on the chlorine. And again, chlorine's main job is to kill bacteria. This can make the job of maintaining a chlorine level a little bit easier. And then it also has a phosphate remover to help keep the phosphate levels low, that again could promote algae growth, that type of thing. So it's very concentrated, 4 ounces per 10,000 gallons once a week. This can make the water easier to maintain. And then last but not least, this is called Optimizer. This is a water additive that you add once a season that, especially if you've got, this is kind of a multi-purpose product. You've got kids that like to swim underneath the water with their eyes open, very gentle on the eyes. It does also help with the water balance, make the water balance easier to maintain. It also is a water enhancer to help the clarity of the water, make the water extremely sparkly clear. And so you add this at the beginning of the season. basically 15 pounds per 10,000 gallons is the dosage on this.
And Carrie, I
So-
recommend that. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Carrie, I'd highly recommend that you check out the Optimizer product for your pool. You don't need a ton of it because you don't have a ton of water. But yeah, if you have kids, and as Randy said, they love to swim underwater, and you want to just really be able to enjoy that pool for the full length of the season. And that, again, if you choose to keep your pool up, it'll also help with openings and closings and just the overall ease of use and ease to maintain. That's a great product to consider.
So
And
how
then this-
would I add that in with like the Smart Shock? I do the Smart Shock once a week. When do you do the Optimizer? How often for like our size of pool?
Just once a year, Carrie.
Oh, okay. And how much? Or does it show on there because it's a
Yeah, the printout would show
gallons.
it. Yeah, it's basically 15 pounds per 10,000 gallons. So your pool would just do half that. We have an 8-pound container that would be perfect for your size pool.
and so I should just get it, put it in, and then how long before you can swim after something like that?
Half an hour.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
And so this slide kind of talks about the typical package if you're using the chlorine tablets, around 20 to 25 pounds for a 20,000 gallon pool, how much Smart Shock, the Algae Complete. Maybe Tony touch on what she would need for the entire season for the 5,000 gallon pool of the Flippin' Frogs.
Yeah, so you would need the whole unit to start off every season, and then you would need probably 2 refills along with that. And then you would need at least one of the 2-pound tubes of Smart Shock. And then we would recommend the Algae Complete and one 8-pound Optimizer jug based on what we've talked about today. And then if you really wanted to enhance it, the Pool Complete Weekly is also an amazing product. It's got some enzyme in it too. It's got clarifiers. It's really that last key step. But I would even venture to say that the Optimizer, I think you would benefit greatly from that. So that kind of answers the question, I think, Randy.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks, Tony.
One more question about the Algae Complete. What do I didn't get anything like that yet, but I definitely don't want that algae. How much was that on the Algae Complete if I got a container of that?
Yeah, so the Algae Complete is you would do one cap. That's a 4-ounce cap, and that's another cool thing that BioGuard has done is all their caps on products like Algae Complete, Pool Complete Weekly, and that it's a 4-ounce cap, so it's easy measurement for your size of pool.
Oh, okay.
It'd be one cap full to start off the season with, and then once a week, you just need basically 3/4 of an ounce. So it's kind of a splash, if you will. So one
Okay,
bottle of
yeah.
Algae Complete would probably last you a couple seasons, approximately,
Yep.
plus
Good
or
to know.
minus.
Thank
Yep,
you.
for sure. Yep, you bet. And so this slide here even simplifies it a little bit more. So when we look at kind of the triangle for success of what we need to do, we kind of went through testing your water, follow the 3-step program, and if you're on the mineral system with the Flippin' Frog, same principle there. Test the water once a week, maintain the 3-step program. Make sure you've got good filtration, cleaning the filter twice a season, chemically cleaning it twice a season, and then make sure you're running the pump long enough. These are really the keys to making sure that you're going to have a successful time with the pool. Really, the last couple of things, we do have a couple of other systems that some people use. And again, this is going to be recorded, so there may be some people that watch this video that are using SoftSwim. This is a totally non-chlorine, all liquid system. Some people are actually allergic to chlorine or have some sensitivities to chlorine. This is a liquid option. We tested a little bit. We have a different test strip that we test with. We typically would recommend this for smaller in-ground or smaller above-ground pools. It works extremely well if you're looking for a non-chlorine option. It's still 3 steps. We still have an algicide that's added every couple of weeks. This SoftSwim B is the product that takes the place of chlorine. This is the level that we want to maintain. 30 to 50 parts per million. And then we typically only have to shock about every 3 to 4 weeks with this system. The one thing that is real important on this system is this Soft Swim B acts like flypaper and acts like a water clarifier, and does put a little bit, works harder on the filter. And so the filter has to be replaced. The filter media has to be replaced every year versus every 4 or 5 years if you're using chlorine. So you just need to be aware of that. We would change the glass, or if you're using sand, we'd have to change the sand every year for this system to work the best. But this is an option. And then there's some people that are on saltwater systems. These have become pretty popular over the last 10 or 15 years. I definitely, if you're on a saltwater system, I would definitely, take a picture of what saltwater device you have, so that the team at the Pool and Spa House knows which system you have, because every system is a little bit different in how much salt they want in the water. But basically, the way these systems work is we put salt in the water, and as that salt water runs through one of these electronic devices, this is a cell. As it runs through that cell, it turns salt water into chlorine. You're basically, instead of adding chlorine by hand, you're making your own chlorine. Basically, you've got your own chlorine factory that's converting it into chlorine, which kills bacteria, also, kills some algae. So you're making your own chlorine. And so this is another option. And so there's a couple of different systems that we have. We have a simple to use mineral spring system that basically is everything kind of in one system, or some people will use just traditional salt and do the other 3 components of the three-step system to keep the water sanitized, shock, and algicide. Just a couple of tips if you are on one of these systems is that it's real important to watch the pH balance. The pH will go up on this system, so you probably will never need pH increaser, the Balance Pack 200, but you'll want to have plenty of low and slow on hand to keep the pH down. Still want to shock periodically, oxidize. One of the other things that's real important on this system is to keep the chlorine stabilizer level in the proper range, so that because the chlorine that's being generated on the system is called unstabilized chlorine. It dissipates very quickly due to the UV rays of the sun. And then once a year, we need to chemically clean the salt water cell, because it does tend to build up with some debris or scale. So, and typically those cells, will last 4 or 5 or 6 years, but they are electronic pieces of equipment that have metal plates in them. They do need to be replaced periodically. They don't last forever. And then really lastly, I put this slide in here because one of the other, besides algae, one of the other common things that we'll run into is cloudy water. And usually cloudy water, there is a cause to cloudy water. It's either letting the chlorine level maybe get too low, pH get too high, not running the pump long enough, dirty filter, those kind of things. So if that is one of the causes, we need to fix those, obviously. And then one of these 2 products can speed the process of getting that pool cleared up. And it kind of depends on how cloudy the water is. So if the water is, fairly cloudy, we'll use this product called 911. This kind of our product for real cloudy water. And if it's just kind of hazy, we'll use a product called Polysheen Blue. These would be basically our cloudy water aids. And kind of like with algae, maybe take a picture of the pool or describe how cloudy the pool is. If you can see the bottom, or if it's just hazy, that'll help us determine what product we would recommend. Carrie, any other questions?
Yeah, I actually just have one. It's sort of aside to when you talked about rashes with the water. We were swimming in my brother's pool, and like after 3 days, one of my sons just would get a rash every time, so we had to stop using it. Do you think that's just a bromine thing, or do you think something could have been off? Like, so do some people just have bromine reactions, kind of?
You mean chlorine?
Well, isn't there the bromine or isn't that I think his pool was Am I not saying it right? Like
No, you're right. Maybe
thought
he was. We don't see bromine used too much in swimming pools,
Well-
but
okay, he's out in Las Vegas, and I mean, he has a pool person that does the pool, but I could have swore they said it was
could
bromine
be.
or
Okay,
something.
it could be, Carrie.
Is it
Some
indoor?
people do.
It's it's a full in the ground pool.
Yeah, you know what? It could very well be. We don't see bromine used that much in outdoor pools, but it could very well be. And frankly, whether it's chlorine or bromine, you're exactly right. It could be some people are sensitive to chlorine or bromine. It could be that the pH was too high. It could be the chlorine level or bromine level is too high. It kind of depends on the type of rash. I mean, if it's kind of a pimply rash, sometimes that's from bacteria in the water. So you almost would have to go to a dermatologist to have them look at it to determine what might have caused that.
Yeah, I was just curious. I was just like, I wondered after you were sharing more about the chemical balances and stuff. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks
Yeah,
for
you
all
bet.
your help. It's been very helpful. I'm ready to uh, get this thing rocking and rolling. So thank you.
Good deal. Good. Well, hope you enjoy the pool. Tony, maybe you can talk about this slide.
Yeah, Carrie, this is just as we wrap up here, as a thank you for joining us today. If you wanted to give the pool complete weekly a try, for your size of pool, this will probably last you maybe 2, maybe 3 seasons, because it's kind of a one size fits all. But there's a coupon. You can scan the QR code there with your phone. Well, actually, if you're on your phone, that might be a little bit more of a trick. You'd probably just take a screenshot.
Yeah, I just took a screenshot of it.
Yeah, so $20 off as a thank you for the Pool Complete Weekly. And then there's also a QR code there for our pool care guide. So a lot of basically everything that Randy's talked about today will be referenced in that quick access pool guide as well. So if you're, wow, what did he say about filtration or circulation or shocking? All these things are going to be in the pool care guide for your quick resource reference. So anyway, Carrie,
Okay,
thank you
thanks.
for your
Yeah,
time.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
welcome.
And anyway, wish you a fun pool season, and we look forward to seeing you again
Thanks.
in our stores. Thank you. Have a great
Yep.
day.
Perfect. Thanks. Bye.